clearly the site is a restricted site, and the geometry of the site is an issue, was an issue for us in one sense. I think the other task at the beginning was to sort of understand what type of institution is this. You know, it's a museum, it's a foundation. Clearly the existing facility benefits from having a certain innocence and provisional quality about being in a factory, which, you know, it's always easier to for art to inhabit found spaces nearly. So I think the problem for Jumex was, if they were to build a new home, it's not only the question of what that home should be like, but what it represents, because it becomes a more formal representation of the institution. The current home is informal in a way, with all the advantages and disadvantages. So I think that was one issue, was how to acknowledge that this was a serious and, in a way, grown-up building. It's not. It's going, you know, one step on from where they were. On the other hand, not to lose some of the qualities that they've built up over these years. It's through their exhibition program and through, you know, in a way, quite an interesting relationship between their activity and the building that they're in. You know, sometimes architecture can kill that energy as well. So that was another issue, was to try and understand, you know, how to make this institution not too institutional. And I think that coincided with another possibility, which is the climate. And I think, you know, Mexico City has an extraordinary opportunity of this benign climate where it's never too hot and never too cold. It gives you the opportunity to go in and out of a building in a way that, for instance, in Berlin, it's not quite so easy. And coming from Europe, this climatic generosity seems to be something which can be a great gift to architecture. And in the case of an institution, surely that also could help. In other words, if the institution can be slightly more open to the public. And clearly that overlaps with another issue about the city, is how do you create public space in this place? You know, how do you define some setting for this building, which can be on the one hand public and on the other hand have a certain definition. All museums have to deal with this static and dynamic program, in the sense that, you know, museums, it used to be easier. They were like treasure boxes, and you went in, a very elite group of people would go in and look at very precisely what they wanted to see, and they go out again. Now they are more social centers in a way, some sort of cultural, social focus. And I think that's what Eugenio wants this building to be. You know, he wants it to be popular, in a sense. He wants it to be a destination for people, and he wants people to come here in a very informal way, as well as, you know, as a serious way. So actually, in terms of the building, it's sort of two buildings. The two top floors are the serious, static, detached spaces, places of contemplation and abstraction. You're away from the city. And the two bottom places are mediators between the city and an institution. So they are, like this, in a way, much more transparent and more promotional of the dynamic potential of an institution like this. I mean, in a way, you can say, you know, it's easy to say, okay, the ground floor should be public.
Yeah.
So every institution would would say, okay, fine, we have a lobby, we have a coffee shop, bookshop maybe. However, here we tried to push that even harder. So, we nearly imagined the building without walls on the ground floor. So in fact, you can see it now with the new doors have arrived, and you can see that the building can open up, and it's nearly, the plaza and the lobby are the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think we pushed this idea of the ground floor public to the most extreme level, and architecturally we confuse things a bit. So this skirt that goes around the building, I mean, there's in a way three definitions of entering the building. One is onto the plaza, which is a little bit raised because of the topography of the site, and also in a way it helps to define the setting of the building. But in a way, as soon as you come up those steps or up the ramp, you're in the building. Then the second boundary or threshold is the skirt of the building itself, which is pulled down, and you sort of go under the skirt, as it were. At that point, you are more protected, but you're still not inside a building. And the third is the glass wall. So we've confused this inside and outside. The cafe is actually outside. It's under the skirt, but outside the wall. And so I think this game of confusion, I think will help promote the publicness of the ground floor. And then you go up, and then you're in the museum. And I think we were interested in how we could, in a way, continue this manipulation of inside and outside, a bit more than just the ground floor. And so this floor is, a sort of experimental floor where we have a sort of vitrine. And this is a gallery, but it's a sort of impractical gallery.
Yeah.
In the sense, like in the National Gallery in Berlin, Mises' impossible room, but a great room. It's a challenge to curators and the director, but it creates a sense of theatre and publicness. Patrick's been a great supporter of this idea that we have there'll be a big curtain, so you can close it off. It gives more visibility from outside as well, that you can in a way look into the museum, and I think that's an interesting, and I think programmatically it's a dynamic room, so there can be a lecture, there can be a cinema show. I mean, on Thursday nights they could do cinema, or they have a video artist, or so it's a much more dynamic. I mean, Patrick's talking about doing something where the audience is always outside, because you could just and you just look inside to this vitrine. We called it the vitrine in a way. So that was in a way trying to create that quality which exists in some museums, where the architecture sometimes a little bit gets in the way. You've somehow got to curate around something, and I think this is a very difficult balance in museum architecture. How to be convenient and inconvenient, in a way. We are really interested always in our museum work to make the best space for art, and suppress art. In a way, the criticism could be of our work is it's too quiet, but actually in terms of showing work, artists are very appreciative of it. But at the same time, I accept that some of the great museums have some aspects which are a challenge to the curator. So, and that was accepted. So this floor joins the ground floor as part of this public dynamic program. So these are two floors where life will always be changing, and there will be events and there'll be people. I mean, in a way, it's a dynamic about people. Then when you go to the next two floors, it's about the art, and it's about looking at art in a more conventional way.
In a quiet way.
In a quiet way, in a reflective way, in a in that thing that only museums in our society give us, is, unless we are religious and we go to church. But if we don't go to church, the only time we are one-on-one, reflecting on something deeper than just our daily concerns, is standing and looking at a painting in a quiet room.